November 3rd, 1944, 08:15 hours, outside the shattered village of Schmidt, Hürtgen Forest, Germany. Obergefreiter Klaus Dietrich pressed himself into the frozen mud of his foxhole as the first American ranging shot whistled overhead. A veteran of 2 years on the Eastern Front, he had learned to survive Soviet artillery through hard-won experience. He knew the pattern. First would come the ranging shots, perhaps 3 or 4 shells as the Russian gunners walked their fire toward the target. Then silence, perhaps 5 minutes, sometimes 10, while the Toking battery calculated corrections. Time enough to relocate, to find better cover, to prepare. But the Americans were different. Terrifyingly different. Dietrich had exactly 22 seconds before his world exploded. Not 5 minutes, not even 1 minute. 22 seconds. In that impossibly brief window, 6 more shells screamed down. Then 6 more. Then another 6. The American battery was firing so rapidly that Dietrich could not distinguish individual explosions. It was a continuous roar, a mechanical thunder that seemed impossible for men operating guns by hand. If you're enjoying this deep dive into the story, hit the subscribe button and let us know in the comments from where in the world you are watching from today. In those first 90 seconds, the single American battery delivered more shells onto Dietrich's position than his entire German artillery battalion could fire in 15 minutes. His company commander, Hauptmann Werner Vogel, survived the barrage long enough to scrawl 1 sentence in his logbook before a second barrage killed him. The Americans do not fire artillery, they operate machines. What German soldiers like Dietrich were experiencing was not merely superior American firepower. It was the manifestation of a fundamental revolution in the nature of warfare itself, the transformation of artillery from an ancient craft, practiced by skilled gunners, into an industrial process executed with mechanical precision. American artillery crews. Most of them civilians in uniform just 2 years earlier, were achieving rates of fire that veteran German gunners considered physically impossible. And they were sustaining those rates for hours. The secret was not courage. German artillerymen were among the finest soldiers in the world, products of a military tradition stretching back generations. The secret was not even in the guns themselves, though American howitzers possessed certain advantages. The secret lay in something the Germans had never fully grasped, something that would prove decisive in the war's outcome. The secret was that the Americans had transformed artillery into a system. To understand the horror that German soldiers experienced when they first encountered American artillery's sustained fire, one must first comprehend the state of artillery doctrine in 1944. For over a century, artillery had followed predictable rhythms. Guns fired in carefully paced sequences. Crews performed complex manual tasks between each shot. Sustained rapid fire was considered impossible for field artillery, a brief burst capability reserved for desperate situations. German artillery doctrine, refined through victories. In Poland, France, and the early stages of the Russian campaign, emphasized accuracy and economy of ammunition. The standard German divisional howitzer, the 10.5 cm Leichte Feldhaubitze 18, was a superbly engineered weapon, designed by Rheinmetall between 1928 and 1930, adopted for service in 1935. It represented the culmination of German artillery development between the wars. The Leif-H-18 fired a 14.9 kilogram high-explosive shell to ranges exceeding 10,600 meters. Its design emphasized durability and precision. With a well-trained crew, it could achieve a maximum rate of fire of 4 to 6 rounds per minute for brief periods. Sustained fire, the rate a battery could maintain for extended periods, was generally 2 to 3 rounds per minute. This seemed adequate. German artillery officers, educated in the finest military academies in Europe, understood that sustained rapid fire was physically demanding. Each shell had to be manually loaded. The breech had to be closed and locked. The firing mechanism had to be activated. The gun would recoil, requiring the crew to reset the piece. Ammunition had to be carried from storage to the gun. These were human tasks, performed by men whose muscles tired, whose movements slowed with exhaustion. Moreover, the German howitzer used separate loading ammunition. The projectile and propellant charge were loaded in, two distinct steps. The gun commander selected from 6 different charge levels depending on desired range. This system provided flexibility, but required additional crew movements and time. Loading a shell at full charge involved multiple careful movements by multiple crew members. German artillery batteries were organized around this human rhythm. A standard battery consisted of 4 guns, each with a crew of 6 to 8 men. The battery could mass its fire when needed, but the fundamental limitation remained. Men could only work so fast for so long. Rapid fire heated the guns, wore the barrels, exhausted the crews. Conservation of strength and ammunition was sensible doctrine. The German assessment of artillery doctrine wasn't wrong based on their own experience and capabilities. At the Battle of France in 1940, German artillery had performed magnificently. Concentrated fire from German guns had suppressed French positions long enough for engineers to construct pontoon bridges across the Meuse River. In the opening stages of Operation Barbarossa, German artillery had blasted holes in Soviet defenses, enabling panzer spearheads to penetrate deep into Brody, Russian territory. But German officers had missed something crucial about their future enemy. The Americans were not approaching artillery as a craft to be perfected through tradition and skill. They were approaching it as an industrial problem to be solved through standardization, training, and systematic organization. The development of American artillery supremacy represented a fundamental shift in thinking. Rather than seeing artillery as individual batteries supporting local commanders, American planners conceived of artillery as an integrated system, a network that could deliver overwhelming force through coordination and industrial efficiency, rather than through individual excellence. The foundation of this system was standardization carried to a degree the Germans never achieved. The American M2, a 105mm howitzer, the standard light field artillery piece, was a marvel not of innovative design, but of manufacturing precision. Developed in the 1930s, standardized in 1940, it entered full production in 1941. Rock Island Arsenal in Illinois perfected production techniques that allowed rapid manufacturing to exact specifications. By the end of World War II, over 10,200 M2A1 howitzers had been produced. But the crucial factor was not the quantity, it was the absolute standardization. Every M2A1 howitzer, whether manufactured in 1942 or 1945, whether produced by Rock Island or by contractors, had identical characteristics. Identical barrel length, identical breech mechanism, identical recoil system, identical weight distribution. This standardization extended to ammunition. American 105mm shells were manufactured in factories from Pennsylvania to California, all to exact specifications. A shell produced in Pittsburgh would have identical ballistic characteristics to one produced in San Diego. The propellant charges were standardized. The fuses were standardized. The primers were standardized. German artillery, by contrast, suffered from increasing variation as the war progressed. Ammunition production, disrupted by Allied bombing and increasingly reliant on slave labor in dispersed facilities, showed declining quality control. German artillery officers had to test-fire new ammunition batches to determine actual performance. Variations in shell weight, propellant quality, and fuse reliability forced constant recalculations. But standardization alone could not explain the American rate of fire advantage. The secret lay in how the Americans had redesigned the entire loading and firing process. The M2A. One used semi-fixed ammunition, a crucial innovation. The projectile and propellant charge were assembled together in a brass cartridge case before being loaded as a single unit. This eliminated one entire loading step compared to German separate loading ammunition. One crew member could carry and load a complete round, rather than requiring coordination between multiple loaders, handling projectile and charge separately. The breech mechanism was optimized for speed. The American horizontal sliding block breech could be opened, a round loaded, and the breech closed in a single fluid motion by Sixer. a trained crew member. The German screw breech, while robust, required additional movements and time. The recoil system was engineered to return the gun to battery, to its firing position, automatically and rapidly. American designers had perfected hydraulic pneumatic recoil mechanisms that absorbed tremendous force of firing and smoothly returned the tube to its original position. The gun crew did not need to manually relay the piece after each shot for continued fire on the same target. The gun carriage was designed for stability and rapid traverse. The split trail design with wide spread provided a stable firing platform that did not require constant adjustment. The traversing mechanism allowed crew members to shift aim quickly without repositioning the entire gun. Most importantly, the Americans had systematically analyzed and optimized every crew movement. At Fort Sill, Oklahoma, the home of the Field Artillery School, instructors had broken down the loading and firing process into its component steps. They had timed each movement. They had identified inefficiencies. They had redesigned crew positions and responsibilities to eliminate wasted motion. The result was a choreographed sequence of movements that resembled industrial production more than traditional artillery drill. Each crew member had specific responsibilities. Each movement flowed into the next without hesitation or confusion. Ammunition handlers positioned rounds within easy reach. Loaders stood, ready to grab each shell the instant the breech opened. The breech operator timed his movements to match the loader's rhythm. The gunner kept his hand on the firing lanyard, ready to fire the instant the breech locked. A well-trained American gun crew could load, fire, and be ready for the next round in 6 seconds. Maximum rate of fire was 10 rounds per minute, sustained for brief periods. More importantly, a trained crew could maintain 3 rounds per minute, the sustained rate of fire, for extended periods, limited only by ammunition supply and barrel heating. This was double the sustained rate German crews could achieve. But the American advantage extended far beyond the individual gun. The Americans had organized their artillery to maximize this rate of fire capability. Each infantry division had 3 battalions of 105mm howitzers. Each battalion had 3 batteries. Each battery had 6 guns, not the German standard of 4. This meant more tubes firing, more shells landing, but more importantly, the Americans had created an ammunition supply system that could keep those guns firing. Each battery was fully motorized. Trucks and half-tracks could tow the guns at highway speeds, but more critically, they could deliver ammunition to the gun positions in continuous flow. German artillery remained predominantly horse-drawn throughout the war. Despite Nazi propaganda showing mechanized panzer divisions, approximately 80% of German motive power relied on horses. Germany entered World War II with 514,000 horses and employed, in total, 2.75 million horses and mules over the course of the war. The average number of horses in German service at any given time exceeded 1.1 million. Each German artillery piece required 6 to 8 horses for transport, limbering the gun, hitching the horse team, moving to a new position, unlimbering, and preparing to fire again required hours under good conditions. In mud or under fire, the process might take half a day. Winter, conditions made movement nearly impossible. Horses required extensive care. Each horse needed up to 12 pounds of grain daily to maintain work capacity. Grazing alone rendered horses unfit for heavy labor. Hitching a 6-horse field artillery team required 6 men working for at least an hour. Horse health deteriorated rapidly under combat stress. Recovery took months. The logistical burden was staggering. German artillery batteries allocated more manpower to caring for horses than to operating guns. Supply trains devoted enormous capacity to hauling fodder rather than ammunition. Every movement required extensive planning and preparation. American batteries could displace, move to a new position, and be ready to fire again in 20 to 30 minutes. The 2.5-ton truck towing an M2A1 could travel at 30 miles per hour on roads. Unlimbering and setting up the gun required minutes, not hours. Ammunition trucks could shuttle continuously between supply points and gun positions, delivering hundreds of rounds in the time it took a German horse-drawn wagon to make a single trip. This mobility advantage meant American batteries could concentrate fire rapidly and then disperse before German counter-battery fire arrived. It meant ammunition stocks could be maintained regardless of weather or road conditions. It meant the guns could keep firing. But perhaps the most significant American advantage, the factor that truly enabled their sustained fire superiority, was training. The United States Army had transformed millions of civilians into skilled artillerymen in less than 3 years. At Fort Sill, the Field Artillery School had developed an intensive program that compressed artillery science into 17 weeks of training. But more importantly, they had standardized that training. Every artilleryman learned the same procedures. Every gun crew practiced the same movements. Every loader, every breech operator, every ammunition handler was trained to exact standards. An artilleryman from New York could join a battery from Texas and integrate immediately because everyone had learned identical procedures. The training emphasized practical application over theory. Students performed thousands of practice firings. Gun crews drilled loading and firing until the movements became automatic. Efficiency was measured and improved systematically. Slow crews identified inefficiencies and corrected them. Fast crews shared their techniques. The approach was industrial, systematic, scalable. The same methods that enabled Ford to mass-produce automobiles enabled the Army to mass-produce competent artillery crews. German artillery training, by contrast, remained traditional. Apprenticeship under experienced officers, gradual development of skills through long practice, individual excellence valued over standardization. This meant German gun crews varied widely in capability. An experienced pre-war battery might match American performance. A newly formed battery with conscripted crews might struggle. There was no systematic method to rapidly raise all crews to a common standard of excellence. The disparity in crew training manifested most clearly in sustained operations. A German battery firing continuously would see its rate of fire decline as crews tired. Movements would slow, mistakes would multiply. Exhausted loaders would fumble shells. Worn crews would require longer to perform each loading cycle. American crews, trained systematically to efficient movements, maintained their rhythm longer. The choreographed sequence of motions, practiced until automatic, required less conscious effort. Crew members could sustain their performance because they were not fighting exhaustion and trying to remember complex procedures simultaneously. The procedures were ingrained. Moreover, American doctrine emphasized rotating crew members to prevent exhaustion. Ammunition handlers would swap positions with loaders. Gun crews would rotate through rest periods during extended bombardments. The systematic approach extended to crew management, not just gunnery. The cumulative effect of all these factors, standardized guns, standardized ammunition, optimized loading procedures, motorized transport, systematic training, and efficient crew management, was that American artillery batteries could sustain rates of fire that German batteries could only achieve in brief bursts. A German Leff-18 battery of 4 guns, firing at maximum sustained rate of 2 to 3 rounds per minute per gun, could deliver 8 to 12 shells per minute. An American battery of 6 M2A1 howitzers, firing at sustained rate of 3 rounds per minute per gun, could deliver 18 shells per minute. But the American advantage was actually greater than these numbers suggested. The Americans could sustain this rate for hours, limited only by ammunition supply. German batteries, with tired crews and strained logistics, would see their rates decline over time. After 30 minutes of sustained fire, a German battery might be delivering 6 shells per minute. The American battery would still be delivering 18. Over the course of an hour-long bombardment, the American battery would deliver over 1,000 rounds. The German battery might deliver 400. The American advantage was not 2 to 1. It was closer to 3 to 1 in sustained operations. And in some cases, when the Americans massed multiple batteries, the disparity reached the 6 to 1 ratio that gives this account its title. German soldiers experiencing this deluge of fire struggled to comprehend what they were facing. Veterans of the Eastern Front had endured massive Soviet bombardments, hour-long barrages from hundreds of guns. But Soviet artillery fired in predictable rhythms. There were pauses, there were patterns, there was time to recover between waves of fire. American artillery, when fully engaged, produced a continuous roar. Shells landed without pause. The sound itself was different, not the irregular rhythm of individual guns, but the mechanical thunder of a factory, systematic and relentless. Hauptfeldwebel Ernst Müller, a battery commander in an artillery regiment defending the West Wall, encountered American counter-battery fire in September 1944. His account, recorded after his capture in October, provides insight into German professional reaction to American methods. We had positioned our battery in woods northwest of Aachen. Good cover, we believed. When American infantry attacked, we provided fire support. Within 3 minutes, American shells were landing on our position. Not ranging shots, accurate fire immediately. We attempted to displace. The American fire followed us. Continuous fire, not salvos, not barrages in the traditional sense. A constant rain of shells. My battery had 4 guns. We could fire perhaps 10 shells per minute at maximum rate, which we could sustain for only a few minutes before exhaustion forced us to slow. The American battery engaging us, I estimated from crater analysis, had 6 guns. They were firing continuously what seemed to be 18 to 20 shells per minute for over 30 minutes. This is not possible with human crews, I thought. But it was happening. We lost 2 guns destroyed, 1 damaged beyond field repair, and 17 men killed or wounded in 35 minutes of American fire. We fired 42 shells total before being forced to abandon our position. The Americans fired, by my estimate, over 600 shells at us. The disparity was not in caliber or range or accuracy. It was in volume. They simply fired more shells than we could possibly answer. Müller's experience was not unique. Across the Western Front in the autumn of 1944, German artillery officers were reaching the same horrifying conclusion. The Americans possessed an artillery system that could outshoot German batteries by factors of 3, 4, even 6 to 1 in sustained bombardments. The realization shattered assumptions about how artillery warfare functioned. German doctrine had always emphasized economy of ammunition and precision of fire. Mass was achieved by concentrating batteries, not by making individual batteries fire faster. The idea that systematic industrial methods could multiply the effective firepower of each battery had not entered German calculations. But the Americans had done more than just speed up individual gun crews. They had created an entire system that supported and enabled that rapid fire. And German soldiers were about to discover that American artillery superiority extended far beyond rate of fire. The true horror was that the Americans could mass this overwhelming firepower from dispersed positions, deliver it with devastating accuracy, and sustain it for as long as ammunition supply permitted. They had transformed artillery from a supporting arm into a dominant weapon system. And they had done it through industrial methods that Germany, despite its vaunted engineering tradition, could neither match nor counter. The full magnitude of American artillery superiority revealed itself most clearly in the forests and villages where German and American forces clashed in close combat. The Hurtgen Forest, that dark expanse of pine and fir along Germany's western border, became a killing ground, where German soldiers learned that their traditional defensive advantages meant nothing against American firepower. The Hurtgen offered ideal defensive terrain. Dense woods limited visibility to 50 meters or less. Steep ravines and thick undergrowth channeled attackers into predictable paths. Concrete bunkers and log-reinforced positions provided protection against small arms and even direct artillery hits. German commanders believed the forest itself would neutralize American material advantages. They were catastrophically wrong. The 4th Infantry Division, attacking through the Hurtgen in November 1944, developed tree burst time on target missions. American forward, observers, working with infantry units deep in the woods, called for concentrated fire using high explosive and white phosphorus shells timed to detonate in the forest canopy. The effect was instantaneous hell. Shells, detonating 30 to 50 feet above ground, sent wood splinters driven downward, like spears. The fragments from the shells mixed with shattered tree limbs created a descending storm of metal and wood. White phosphorus ignited upon contact with air, burning at temperatures exceeding 1,300 degrees Celsius. The burning phosphorus set the forest floor ablaze and could not be extinguished with water. Obergefreiter Hans Richter of the 28th Volksgrenadier Division survived one such bombardment on November 6. His testimony, recorded by American intelligence officers after his capture 3 days later, conveys the experience. We had constructed excellent positions. Log bunkers with earth covering 2 meters thick. The trees themselves provided additional protection. We had survived artillery bombardments before. The trees absorbed much of the blast and fragmentation. We believed ourselves safe. The American barrage began, without warning. No ranging shots. The first shells we heard were already exploding above us, not on the ground where our bunkers would protect us, but in the trees. The sound was different, sharper, more violent. Then came the splinters, wood fragments as long as my arm driven straight down with the terrible force. They penetrated our overhead cover. They struck men through their helmets. I saw Gefreiter Wolf killed by a tree splinter that entered through his shoulder and emerged from his hip. Not a shell fragment, a piece of tree trunk, driven like a spear. Then the forest began to burn. The white phosphorus shells started fires everywhere. The smoke was choking. Men fled the bunkers, only to be caught by the continuing bombardment. The barrage lasted perhaps 3 minutes. When it ended, my platoon of 42 men had 11 survivors. The position we had worked for days to construct was destroyed in less time than it takes to smoke a cigarette. What particularly horrified German defenders was the volume of fire American batteries could concentrate in such brief periods. The 28th Infantry Division attacking towards Schmidt on November 6 called for a time-on-target mission involving 12 battalions, 144 guns, firing into a 500-meter square area. Over 3,000 shells landed in approximately 30 seconds. The mathematical precision was staggering. Guns positioned at distances from 5,000 to 20,000 meters, firing shells with different times of flight, all calculated so their rounds arrived in a coordinated deluge. German positions that had held for weeks were obliterated in half a minute. The defenders who survived were psychologically shattered. German medical reports from aid stations behind the Hurtgen documented unprecedented rates of what they termed artillery-induced trauma syndrome. These were not men who broke under their first exposure to combat. These were veterans, soldiers who had survived the Eastern Front, men who had endured Soviet bombardments that lasted hours. But the coordinated devastation of American time-on-target fire in the dense forest produced psychological casualties at rates doctors had never encountered. The symptoms were distinctive. Soldiers found alive after bombardments but unable to speak or respond to commands. Men who would begin, trembling uncontrollably at any loud sound. Veterans who had functioned normally under fire, now paralyzed by fear when shells were heard in the distance. The German Army's chief psychiatrist in the West, Stabsarzt Dr. Friedrich Pohl, submitted a report to Army Group B headquarters in December 1944 analyzing the phenomenon. Traditional artillery neurosis, what the British call shell shock, develops gradually. Soldiers exposed to prolonged bombardment slowly lose their capacity to function. The onset is predictable. Early symptoms include insomnia, exaggerated startle, response, and difficulty concentrating. With continued exposure, symptoms worsen until the soldier can no longer perform his duties. What we are observing in soldiers exposed to American concentrated fire techniques is qualitatively different. The onset is sudden and acute. Soldiers who were functioning normally before a bombardment are found afterwards in catatonic states. The psychological trauma appears equivalent to physical head trauma, but without any physical injury to the brain. I believe the instantaneous nature of American time-on-target bombardments prevents the instelle, psychological defense mechanisms soldiers normally employ. When a bombardment begins gradually, soldiers can prepare themselves mentally. They can seek cover, they can tell themselves they survived the first explosion, and can survive the next. There is agency, however limited. American coordinated fire removes all agency. Soldiers are functioning normally one instant, and in the middle of coordinated devastation the next. The brain has no time to process the transition from safety to mortal danger. The psychological result appears to be a form of acute dissociative response. The mind simply shuts down, rather than process the overwhelming sensory input. Dr. Pohl's analysis was clinically precise but missed the deeper significance. What German soldiers were experiencing was not merely psychological trauma from intense bombardment. They were experiencing the psychological impact of encountering an enemy whose military capabilities exceeded anything in their conceptual framework. German soldiers had been trained in a military tradition emphasizing courage, discipline, and skill. They believed that well-trained, courageous soldiers, in good positions, could withstand any attack. American artillery was demonstrating that individual courage and skill were irrelevant. That well-constructed positions could be destroyed before the defenders could even react. That the outcome was determined by industrial capacity and systematic organization rather than by martial virtue. This realization, perhaps more than the physical danger, was what broke men psychologically. The introduction of the variable time fuse in December 1944 magnified American artillery effectiveness to even more devastating levels. The VT fuse, also called the proximity fuse, contained a miniature radar transmitter and receiver in the nose of the artillery shell. The transmitter broadcast a radio signal. When the reflected signal indicated the shell was approaching the ground or any object, it triggered detonation. The result was shells that exploded at optimal height, for maximum lethality, typically 10 to 20 meters above ground. The VT fuse eliminated all the variables that affected conventional time fuses: wind, temperature, barrel wear, all the factors that could cause a time-fused shell to explode too high or bury itself before detonation were irrelevant. The VT fuse guaranteed optimal airburst every time. The United States Navy had been using VT fuses in anti-aircraft operations since January 1943 with devastating effectiveness. Against Vone flying bombs over England, VT-fused shells destroyed 79% of Vone targets, compared to perhaps 25% for conventional fuses. The lethal fragment area of a VT-fused shell was 3,000 square feet, compared to 60 square feet for a conventional fuse. General Dwight Eisenhower personally requested permission to employ VT fuses in ground artillery during the Battle of the Bulge. The Pentagon initially refused, concerned that if the Germans captured intact fuses, they might copy the technology. Eisenhower protested vehemently, arguing that the tactical advantage justified the security risk. Authorization finally came on December 19th through 21st, 1944. As the German offensive in the Ardennes reached its maximum penetration, German soldiers caught in the open during the Ardennes offensive discovered that VT-fused shells negated all the survival techniques they had learned. On the Eastern Front, soldiers learned to go flat at the first explosion. Even shallow depressions in the ground provided protection from fragments traveling horizontally from ground bursts. VT-fused shells exploded above them. The fragments came down like rain. Men in foxholes, men who should have been protected by overhead cover, were killed by fragments striking vertically downward. Prone soldiers found that position offered no protection whatsoever. Unteroffizier Paul Schmidt of the 2nd SS Panzer Division encountered VT-fused bombardment during the division's attack toward Dinant on December 19th. His account, recorded in a diary found on his body after he was killed on December 22nd, "We advanced in company strength across open ground near Marsh. American forward observers must have seen us. The barrage began instantly. But these shells were different. Every single one burst in, the air above us. Not one ground burst. Not one shell that failed to detonate. We went to ground immediately, standard procedure. But the explosions continued above us. Men lying flat were torn by fragments from above. Gefreiter Kunz, lying in a depression perhaps 30 centimeters deep, was killed by fragments that struck his back and legs. The depression that should have saved him was useless. We tried to run forward to escape the barrage. More airbursts followed us. Men fell with each step. We tried to retreat. The barrage shifted to cover our retreat. There was no escape, no tactics, no technique, no courage that could preserve us. We simply died or did not die based on chance alone. In my time on the Eastern Front, I survived many bombardments through skill and awareness. Reading the pattern of fire, knowing when to move and when to stay low, understanding how to use terrain. None of that mattered against these demon shells. The Americans have made courage and skill irrelevant. They have reduced warfare to industrial murder. Schmidt's bitter conclusion reflected a growing understanding among German soldiers. The Americans had created an artillery system where individual excellence was irrelevant, where defensive preparations could be overwhelmed in minutes, where the outcome was determined before the fighting even began by industrial capacity and organizational superiority. The scale of American artillery ammunition expenditure astonished German professional officers. During Operation Cobra in July 1944, American artillery allocated 170,000 shells for the preliminary bombardment alone. A single American corps in Normandy routinely fired more ammunition in one day than an entire German army fired in a week. During the Battle of the Bulge in December 1944, American artillery fired over 1,255,000 rounds. 4,155 American guns delivered this deluge. German artillery, by contrast, was increasingly starved for ammunition. Oberst Heinrich Weber, Chief of Staff for a German Corps Artillery Command, documented the ammunition crisis in his war diary. We received our ammunition allocation for December. 50 shells per gun for the entire month. 50 shells to support an entire corps through a major offensive. I was instructed to justify each fire mission to Corps headquarters, explaining why this particular target merited expenditure of irreplaceable ammunition. Meanwhile, American artillery fires thousands of shells daily with no apparent concern for conservation. On December 21st, my forward, observers reported American batteries firing continuous harassment and interdiction fire throughout the night. Not concentrated barrages, simply random fire to prevent rest and movement. They fire more ammunition in harassment than we receive for our entire monthly allocation. The disparity is not merely tactical. It is industrial and economic. The Americans can afford to fire liberally because their factories produce ammunition in quantities we cannot match. Their supply system delivers that ammunition to forward batteries because they have trucks while we have horses. Their guns can fire that ammunition rapidly because their crews are trained systematically rather than traditionally. We are not fighting an army. We are fighting an industrial system that has been applied to warfare, and we have no counter. Weber's assessment was grimly accurate. By late 1944, German ammunition production was collapsing under Allied bombing. Factories that had produced consistent, high-quality shells were destroyed or dispersed. Replacement production using slave labor in scattered facilities produced ammunition of declining quality. If you find this story engaging, please take a moment to subscribe and enable notifications. It helps us continue producing in-depth content like this. German artillery officers reported receiving ammunition batches where 30 to 70% of shells were duds that failed to explode. At the Anzio beachhead, earlier in the year, German long-range 170mm guns should have devastated Allied positions, but 70% of the shells fired were duds, rendering the bombardment ineffective. The inconsistency forced German batteries to test fire new ammunition batches to determine actual performance. This wasted precious shells and revealed battery positions to American counter-battery fire. The Germans found themselves trapped in a vicious cycle. Declining ammunition quality forced testing wasted ammunition and drew counterfire. Counterfire destroyed guns and killed crews. Fewer guns meant less fire support. Less fire support meant infantry failures. Infantry failures meant more ground lost. The Americans, by contrast, manufactured ammunition to exacting specifications in factories operating around the clock. Rock Island Arsenal alone was producing shells at rates that exceeded total German production. Every shell met exact weight specifications, every propellant charge delivered consistent energy, every fuse functioned reliably. This absolute consistency enabled the rapid fire rates American crews achieved. German crews had to verify each round, check the charge, inspect the fuse. Variations in ammunition quality meant each shot was slightly unpredictable. American crews simply loaded and fired, confident that every round would perform identically. The ammunition supply chain was equally important. American trucks could deliver hundreds of rounds to gun positions in hours. German horse-drawn wagons might take days to move equivalent quantities over the same distance. Winter conditions that slowed German resupply merely inconvenienced American motorized logistics. During the Ardennes offensive, German planners had calculated ammunition requirements based on capturing American supply dumps. The offensive plan explicitly stated that German forces would resupply from captured American stocks because German logistics could not deliver adequate ammunition to sustain the attack. When American forces held key supply depots, like Bastogne, the German offensive stalled partially due to ammunition exhaustion. German units that penetrated deepest into American lines found themselves with empty ammunition racks, unable to continue the advance or to defend against American counterattacks. At Bastogne itself, surrounded, American forces called for time-on-target missions, danger close to their own perimeter. The term meant shells would land within 600 meters of friendly positions, close enough that American troops took casualties from their own artillery. But the devastating effect on German assault formations was worth the risk. On December 22nd, as the 2nd Panzer Division attempted to breach the American perimeter from the west, forward observers with the 101st Airborne Division called for emergency fire support. Within 4 minutes, 8 artillery battalions, nearly 100 guns positioned up to 20 kilometers away, had calculated firing solutions. The time-on-target barrage caught the German lead battalion in march formation on the approach road. The first salvo destroyed or disabled every vehicle in the column's first 500 meters. Subsequent salvos walked through the entire battalion. In 90 seconds of coordinated fire, an entire German battalion ceased to exist as a combat formation. General Lieutenant Heinrich von Luttwitz, commanding the 47th Panzer Corps, witnessed the destruction from his command post. His report to 5th Panzer Army Headquarters described what he called the impossibility of offensive action against American artillery. The Americans do not merely respond to our attacks, they destroy them before they can develop. Our assault formations must concentrate to achieve breakthrough force. The moment they concentrate, American artillery annihilates them. We cannot mass without being destroyed. We cannot attack dispersed and succeed. The Americans have created a tactical impossibility. Their rate of fire is such that a single American battery delivers more shells in 1 minute than my entire corps artillery can fire in 15 minutes. Their response time from observation to impact is measured in minutes, while ours is measured in tens of minutes. Their ammunition supply appears unlimited while we ration every shell. Most significantly, their forward observers can call upon any artillery in range. A lieutenant with an American infantry company commands more responsive firepower than I possess as a corps commander. This inversion of military hierarchy through technological and organizational means makes our traditional tactical doctrine obsolete. Von Luttwitz had identified the key organizational innovation that multiplied American artillery effectiveness. American forward observers, trained specialists embedded with infantry units, could request fire from division, corps, or even army artillery assets. The fire direction centers were organized to respond to any request from any observer. German artillery remained rigidly hierarchical. Division artillery supported division operations. Corps artillery supported corps-level objectives. Requesting fire from higher-level assets required routing requests through multiple headquarters, each of which had to approve the mission. The process took hours when it worked at all. An American rifle company under attack could have artillery support from multiple divisions landing within minutes. A German regiment under attack might wait hours for corps artillery support and receive none if corps headquarters determined other missions had higher priority. The flexibility of the American system meant firepower could be concentrated rapidly wherever needed. The rigidity of the German system meant firepower was diluted across the front, rarely achieving decisive concentration at critical points. German attempts to counter American artillery superiority failed comprehensively. Counter-battery fire required locating American guns, calculating firing solutions, and delivering accurate fire before the American battery displaced. German artillery observers, still relying primarily on visual observation and sound ranging, struggled to locate American batteries in time. American batteries would fire their missions and displace within 20 to 30 minutes. German counter-battery fire would arrive at empty positions. The one-time German observers did locate American batteries accurately. The response revealed the rate of fire disparity with brutal clarity. Hauptmann Friedrich Bauer, commanding a battery of 105mm Leif H-18 howitzers, engaged American batteries near Aachen in October 1944. Our forward observers located 3 American batteries in woods northwest of the city. Excellent targets. I received permission to engage. We fired a time-on-target mission. 4 guns, first salvo, 16 shells. Good effect observed. We prepared to fire for effect. Before we could fire our second salvo, American counter-battery fire landed on our position. Not ranging shots, accurate fire immediately. I estimated 6 American guns engaging us. They fired continuously. We attempted to return fire. Between their first salvo and our second, the Americans fired 6 salvos, 6 for our one. We never completed our second salvo. American fire destroyed 2 of my guns and damaged another. We displaced under fire. The Americans continued firing at our new position, though with less accuracy initially, but they adjusted so quickly we were forced to displace again. In 30 minutes of attempted counter-battery action, we fired 16 shells total. The Americans fired what I estimate was over 300 shells at us. The disparity in rate of fire made counter-battery action suicidal. We could not shoot fast enough to suppress them before they suppressed us. The exchange rate, shells fired versus shells received, made victory impossible. Bauer's experience was typical. German artillery units that attempted counter-battery fire suffered devastating losses. American batteries could deliver suppressive fire so rapidly that German guns were destroyed before they could fire enough shells to matter. The exchange rate made counter-battery operations a losing proposition. German artillery commanders began refusing counter-battery missions, preserving their guns for defensive fire in support of infantry. This concession of counter-battery superiority meant American forward observers operated with near impunity. American artillery could fire without fear of effective counterfire. The psychological impact on German soldiers extended far beyond those directly experiencing bombardments. The knowledge that American artillery could strike anywhere, anytime, with overwhelming force affected German tactical decision-making at all levels. German commanders became reluctant to concentrate forces. Massing troops for counterattacks risked immediate artillery destruction, but dispersed forces lacked combat power and could be defeated piecemeal by American combined arms teams. German infantry became reluctant to move during daylight. American forward observers, often operating in light aircraft called grasshoppers, could spot movement and call fire within minutes, but restricting movement to darkness reduced operational tempo and limited tactical options. German morale deteriorated as soldiers realized their courage and skill meant nothing against American industrial firepower. Veterans who had survived years of combat on the Eastern Front broke psychologically after weeks facing American artillery in the West. Replacement soldiers, inadequately trained and thrown into combat without proper preparation, often surrendered at the first opportunity. Interrogations of German prisoners in late 1944 and early 1945 consistently revealed the psychological dominance American artillery had achieved. When asked what weapon they feared most, the overwhelming response was American artillery. Not tanks, not aircraft, not even infantry with superior numbers. Artillery. Gefreiter Otto Klein, captured near the Ruhr River in February 1945, articulated what many felt. I had trained for 3 years before seeing combat. I learned to be a good soldier. I learned tactics, weapons handling, discipline. I believed that skill and courage mattered, that a well-trained soldier in a good position could hold against superior numbers. The Americans proved that belief false. Their artillery made training and courage irrelevant. You could be the best soldier in the Wehrmacht, in the finest defensive position ever constructed, and the Americans would destroy you in minutes without even seeing you. They killed from 20 kilometers away, with guns you never saw, in quantities you could not survive. It was not war as I had been trained to understand it. War involves soldiers fighting soldiers, skill against skill, courage against courage. The Americans removed all that. They simply applied industrial force until you were dead or captured. There was no honor in it, no test of soldiership, just systematic destruction. Klein's complaint about the absence of honor or test of soldiership revealed the fundamental misunderstanding that persisted even after German defeat. The Americans had not abandoned military virtue. They had transcended it through superior organization and industrial application. American soldiers were not more courageous than Germans. American gunners were not more skilled individually than their German counterparts. What the Americans had achieved was the transformation of artillery from a craft dependent on individual skill into a system whose effectiveness derived from organization and industrial support. The standardized guns, standardized ammunition, systematic training, motorized transport, and flexible command structure created a whole greater than the sum of its parts. Each element reinforced the others. Standardization enabled rapid fire. Motorization enabled sustained ammunition supply. Training enabled consistent performance. Flexible command enabled massing of fires. The Germans could not replicate this system because they lacked the industrial foundation. German war production, disrupted by bombing and hampered by poor resource allocation, could not manufacture standardized components in required quantities. German logistics, dependent on horses, could not deliver ammunition fast enough. German training, traditional and individualized, could not mass-produce competent crews. Germany had entered World War II with the TARM, finest army in the world, soldiers trained in military tradition stretching back to Frederick the Great. But tradition and excellence could not overcome systematic industrial application. The Americans demonstrated that organizational efficiency mattered more than individual quality. That system, design mattered more than component superiority. That industrial capacity, properly applied, was the decisive factor in modern warfare. As American forces drove across the Rhine in March 1945, German artillery opposition was minimal. Batteries that had survived the campaign were out of ammunition, out of replacement barrels, out of trained crews. The few guns that did fire were immediately silenced by American counter-battery fire delivered with surgical precision. At the Remagen bridgehead on March 7th, German commanders ordered every available artillery piece to fire on the Ludendorff Bridge to destroy it before American forces could establish a strong presence on the east bank. German gunners fired everything they had: 88mm anti-aircraft guns, 105mm howitzers, even 150mm pieces brought forward from rear areas. They failed to destroy the bridge. American engineers kept it operational long enough for substantial forces to cross. The American artillery shield protecting the bridgehead was impenetrable. Any German gun that revealed its position by firing was destroyed within minutes by overwhelming American counter-battery fire. Oberst Hans Krebs, artillery commander for Army Group B, submitted his final report on March 15, 1945. American artillery superiority has made effective defense impossible. Their rate of fire exceeds our capacity to respond by factors of 4 to 6 to 1. Their ammunition supply appears unlimited. Their counter-battery response time is measured in minutes. Our guns survive on average less than 1 hour after first firing. We have lost this campaign not through failure of courage or skill. Our soldiers fight bravely. Our commanders display tactical competence. But we cannot overcome the industrial and organizational superiority the Americans bring to bear. Their artillery alone delivers more destructive force than our entire combined arms efforts can match. The Americans have created a new form of warfare, where material superiority is so overwhelming that traditional military virtues become secondary considerations. This is the future of war, and Germany is not equipped industrially or organizationally to compete in this future. Krebs's assessment, written 3 weeks before Army Group B's surrender, was the epitaph for German artillery. The finest tradition of artillery excellence in Europe, the arm that Bismarck had called the King of Battles, had been rendered obsolete by American industrial methods. The story of German forces encountering American artillery's sustained fire. Superiority marks a turning point in military history. The transformation of warfare from an art practiced by warriors into a science executed by systems. German soldiers, products of Europe's most professional military tradition, found themselves overwhelmed not by superior soldiers, but by superior organization. The thunder that fell continuously on German positions in 1944 and 45 was not merely the sound of explosions. It was the sound of one age of warfare ending and another beginning. The age where industrial capacity properly applied would defeat martial tradition. Where systematic organization would overcome individual excellence. Where the army that could fire 6 salvos for every 1 enemy salvo would win regardless of courage or skill. For the Germans who survived, the lesson was bitter but clear. Modern warfare belonged to those who could best apply industrial and organizational principles to military problems, not to those with the longest traditions, not to those with the bravest soldiers, not to those with the most skilled officers, but to those who could transform military operations into systematic processes, designed and executed with industrial efficiency. American artillery achieved its devastating effectiveness through no single innovation. Not through better guns, though American howitzers were excellent. Not through braver gunners, though American artillerymen were certainly courageous. The advantage came from seeing artillery as a complete system and optimizing every element of that system. The guns were standardized for consistent performance. The ammunition was manufactured to exact specifications. The loading procedures were analyzed and perfected. The crews were trained systematically. The logistics were motorized and abundant. The command structure enabled flexibility. Every piece worked together, creating capability far exceeding what the individual components suggested. This systematic approach, this application of industrial principles to military operations, gave American artillery its 6-to-1 advantage in sustained fire. And that advantage, multiplied across hundreds of batteries firing millions of shells, proved decisive in the campaign to defeat Germany. The veterans who experienced American artillery superiority never forgot. After the war, as Germany rebuilt its military, the Bundeswehr made artillery modernization a top priority. The explicit goal was to match American capabilities in rate of fire, mobility, and command flexibility. The ghost of American artillery dominance haunted German military planning for decades. For the Americans, the lessons were equally clear. The systematic approach that had proven so effective in World War II became the foundation for American military doctrine. Standardization, systematic training, industrial logistics, and flexible command would remain core principles. Future developments in computerized fire control, GPS-guided munitions, and long-range precision fires, all built on the organizational foundations laid in World War II. The rate of fire advantage that shocked German soldiers in 1944 seems modest by modern standards. 6 salvos to 1. But that advantage, achieved through systematic optimization of every element of the artillery system, demonstrated a fundamental truth about modern warfare. Victory belongs not to those who fight hardest, but to those who organize best. Not to those with the most courage, but to those with the most effective systems. Not to the warriors, but to the industrialists who can apply systematic methods to military problems. The German soldiers who died under American artillery fire, who surrendered in despair, who broke psychologically under the continuous thunder of shells, were witnesses to this new reality. They learned, too late to change, the outcome, that the future of warfare belonged to the Americans, to those who could fire 6 salvos for every 1 salvo their enemies could answer, to those who had transformed artillery from an ancient craft into a modern industrial process. In the age of industrial warfare, organization, triumphs over tradition, systems defeat soldiers, and sustained fire overwhelms sporadic excellence. The Germans learned this lesson under the continuous, mechanical thunder of American artillery, a lesson written in millions of shells, thousands of guns, and the systematic application of time-stirred industrial methods to the ancient art of war. Thank you for watching. For more detailed historical breakdowns, check out the other videos on your screen now, and don't forget to subscribe.